I'm Sari Kimball, and I've done just about everything in the food industry. I have helped hundreds of packaged food business entrepreneurs, and now I want to help you make your delicious dream a reality. Whether you want to be successful at farmers markets, online, or wholesale onto store shelves, food business success is your secret ingredient. I will show you how to avoid an expensive hobby and instead run a profitable food business. Now let's jump in. All right, everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I have such a fun guest with me. It's a real honor to be here with Brady Stewart of Brady Seasonings. So first of all, welcome, Brady.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to see you.
So fun to do this. We've been wanting to do a podcast for a while, but I wanted to kind of hold off, and I think this is a great time to do it. But I will say you and Katie were my two first clients ever. So
all right.
Yeah, we've been together a long time.
Look at that. You're just collecting the merit badges back there. I like it.
I know, right? Cool. So it started with jam and seasoning blends. Here we are. So 3 years, 4, I don't even know.
It's like, we're like going on because it'll be 5 years that I started my company in February. And I think it was like a year and some change after that we met. So.
Yeah. It's been so fun to be on this journey, and we both changed and grown and evolved so much. And so why don't Brady, you introduce yourself a little bit and your product? Like, what is your business? Tell all the people.
Yeah, of course. My name's Brady Stewart. I live in Fort Collins, Colorado. And about 5 years ago, I started a food business called Brady Seasonings, literally out of my home kitchen. I worked in the
Cottage
food industry.
Right?
Yeah. I just started with the cottage food laws. Colorado is, if you're listening and you don't know and you're thinking about doing it, it's really cool. It's a great state to do it. Definitely check into that cottage food laws act. Anyway, I knew I'd always wanted to start my own business. I thought it would be food oriented. Being in the food industry, I have a degree in food engineering from Oklahoma State University. Worked for large food manufacturers. I've done anything in a kitchen and restaurant, my younger years, and so. I was trying to figure out what to do, and my wife always noticed I was blending seasoning blends in the kitchen. She's like, why don't you do that? And so I just kind of ran with it from absolute ground level. Started looking where to buy bulk, what could I do, started coming up with my blends and my branding and my labels, and really just piecemealed it at a time. I kept my full-time job, but I've been doing it on the side and just trying to grow it ever since. And Sari's been a big part of that journey, helping with business consultations and coaching and just figuring out, literally how to go from, hey, this thing's neat in my kitchen to how do I sell it to the public at large? How do I make it profitable?
Yeah.
Keep it going.
Yeah, we did a little bit of rebranding. We got some updated labels.
Oh yeah.
We're going to talk all about successes and wins, and also pivoting and
absolutely.
F word, right? The failure.
Oh yeah.
The learning.
Yeah, that's failure. A big one. That's one of the biggest pieces of the equation. So.
Yeah. So it's such a good time to have you on, because your journey has been filled with really positive things. Like, we've definitely been like, oh my gosh, we got into Safeway, and you're on was it 90 some stores at
Colorado? At one point it was like 130, and then it always fluxes because between the distributors and Safeway, they kind of play by different rules. And so well over 100 stores total, probably close to 150. Nice. Every that's all in. So
got you into distribution. We kind of leveled up those main labels, but I guess so maybe take us a little more on your journey, in that you started cottage food, and then what was your next? I think you started doing one little farmer's market, right? I think that's I started over in Windsor, which you guys are familiar with, the northern Colorado area. It's kind of a bedroom community to Fort Collins and Loveland here. And at that point, we're starting from no knowledge at all of this. I really just started hitting the pavement. So on weekends, I saw these gift stores that had kind of similar products, and I was pounding the pavement literally up in Estes Park, Colorado. And one guy in particular, I met him, and he just said, "Hey, I like your product, but you can't sell it in the store. You have to
have a wholesale license, and there's all sorts of stipulations that come with that of, you need to have it made in a commercial kitchen. And so I kind of was like, oh, wow, that's a large step. Everybody should be kind of scared of that. It happens.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the guy gave me a card and said, hey, my son owns a seasonings, co-packing, manufacturing, and storefront called Old Town Spice Shop.
Okay.
And finding out, there's different ways to go. You may not have to rent your own commercial kitchen and warehouse your raw ingredients. You can go the co-packer route. So what I did is I worked with a guy named Sean Godby, who owns Old Town Spice Shop here in Fort Collins. And we figured out how to develop my flavors on a large scale. Sometimes when you scale up, you got to hit your weights and volumes, and there's a lot of trial and error. I think the first few I did of one of my flavors had so much acid it actually burned my mouth. Trying it out, so definitely worth the trial and error.
Yeah, and we get away from teaspoons and cups.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
right?
Volume, and yeah, it was cool. And so really, the win there was networking and just being open to what came my way, because it was a bit of a blank slate. I didn't know the direction I wanted to go. I didn't know, honestly, some of the regulations, the rules, what's allowable. And so just asking the question, you'll be blown away what you find.
Yeah. Food business success wasn't around yet. It's okay.
I know, yeah. Well, man,
you're forgiven.
And so it's the Google search and then asking somebody who's doing it at a farmer's market. But that was a big win, just because I do still have a full-time job as an engineer. Between the cost of renting a commercial kitchen and warehousing and the time commitment, it just wasn't for me. So if I could have somebody still bottle and label my product to my specification and basically cover all my bases I need to from a regulatory standpoint and still hit a cost point, that, that's the direction I went. And it was a huge win.
Yeah, no, 100%. And not all products are destined for co-packing or right away, but I think I've worked with a number of seasoning blends now, and it makes, and we've actually used Sean for a couple of them. So it makes a lot of sense because the shelf life is long on those. And yeah.
Well, and one of the things kind of highlight you, Sarah, we built out a costing model, right? We made sure that, hey, can we go and make the product, still be able to sell it and make the profit, right? We figured out our margins. Yeah. That was, just from a business standpoint, the work up front on that was huge, because that told me how many do I need to sell to remain profitable? How many, can I sell to go and scale up and get better margins from the co-packer? Where do I need to set my price, for online sales, for if I go to distribution, for a store? How do I ship it at that size? And so that was huge, building that costing model. Those are the real nuts and bolts of the business. Sometimes people just don't know,
No. Yeah. People are excited. They just want to get their product out there, and I'm all for that. That's what farmers markets are for.
Right.
But when you start going into stores and wholesale, yes, legal, all the licensing and legal aspects of your business, your label, your product. And then, let's not write a check every time we, let's make sure we're profitable. Right.
Exactly. And just
check to the wholesaler.
Out, right? I mean, that's what businesses do it every single day, and learning a little bit of that about that, even at just the surface level, is huge, right? It just gives you an insight of how does it work? Because somebody might have the most amazing salsa recipe and have no idea about numbers. And so having that knowledge, just enough, shows you, hey, is this a real thing that we could run with? And it takes a lot of the fear out, right?
Yeah.
Numbers are certainty. And so it takes a lot of the fear out.
Yeah. Take out the drama. It's just math, just numbers.
Yeah.
Now we know. So we got the co-packing, where you're rocking and rolling. Then you start hitting some local grocery stores where we, in Fort Collins, and getting on store shelves. And then you kept doing some farmers markets. So things were growing, kind of getting bigger
absolutely.
At that point.
And I think a lot of it, Colorado is a very unique state. I moved here about six and some change years ago from Oklahoma. The general environment, we talked about the cottage food laws earlier here, are very conducive to starting a small business, and especially a small food business. You think of all the farmers markets, you think of the crunchy granola independent grocers. Those are the guys that are your friends. They're the ones that are willing to take a chance on somebody who hasn't been in business for a long time, someone who doesn't have a lot of backing and money and distribution. And so really the big step and the next one, and it was a lot of footwork, was calling and going to and getting samples to these independent grocers who want to say, you know what, we'll take a shot on you and see how your product works. And so, you're getting them samples and you're having to do the follow-up, you got to put on your sales cap. And a lot of people don't like that, but sales is just a natural part of marketing. It doesn't have to be this taboo, sleazy thing. It's really not. It's here's my product. How can it benefit both of us? And getting it out there. And it's just a natural part of it, and if you're not good at it, try and get better or figure out somebody who can help you. But that was a big piece, was getting some of the smaller grocers on board, because then what that signaled when I wanted to go to a distributor and get in the Safeways and the larger retailer chains of the world was, hey, this person has backing. I've got a little bit of legitimacy, right? Yep. Because the products are in competing stores and they've stayed in there and they've made sales. And that was the big piece, is getting your product out there, especially in kind of a local regional area and building from here out. I do have stores in 20 some odd states now. A gift store, a small grocery store will find me online, or I've met somebody here or there, but really going to each store that that could carry your product and is willing to, hitting those and just making those connections. And it's time consuming, but it's totally worth it. And again, that's my that was my journey. Some people, it may be purely online sales. Some people might be satisfied with just the farmers market or the holiday markets. But I knew just with the volumes I needed to make and my profit margin, again, because we spent the time up front putting the business model together and the financial models together, I needed to be in retailers. I needed big volumes of sales, right?
Yeah.
Making $1 to $2 off a bottle of seasoning, that's a lot of bottles you got to sell. And so I just knew that was my path. Yeah. And then, I got with Loco Foods. It's a distributor out of Fort Collins. And basically what they do is specialize in local producers that distribute to not only some of the independent grocers, but Safeway. They're distributor of Safeway here, and work through them. And again, they had metrics I had to hit, right? So going back to getting all those independent stores, they said, you have to sell X amount of units a month. You have to gross X amount of profit. And once you do, we'll get you, on with us. And that's been a win, not only from Safeway, but other grocers and retailers that they service. So it's really, it's building blocks. Like if you can tell from what I'm saying, you do this step and you work at it, and then you get this step and you meet some people, you might catch a break here. And so it's definitely a long journey. There's no silver bullet home runs usually, as you can tell, unless you have tons and tons of money, which so many people don't. But
that's what I love about your story. And I just thought this is going to be a nice, feel good, but also a real, I told you, I'm like, let's just be real about it. And I always appreciate your willingness to be candid and because, when people are like, what's the recipe? Just tell me what to do. And it's like, I can tell you the foundational pieces, but how it comes together, that's the gift you get at the end. Like you look back and say, that's how it was all going to come together. We looked at distribution, but we didn't have the numbers yet. And then you kept hustling and it seemed like, and then you would meet somebody, so-and-so, and, you were putting together stuff with that magazine, you were doing interviews and recipes, you were doing the radio show. I mean, you were really you were willing to try a lot of things.
Right. And those things are fun. And that's the, so many people, like you said, they want the recipe and it's I hate to do the only recipe is hard work. It kind of is, but you're playing the odds, right? So if you have a good financial model and you're networking and you've got a good product and you're really playing the odds, you're giving yourself the best chance for something good to happen. And I like to write. I like to food write. I got in met some people that, have local publications, use social media. It's your friend. I mean, you wouldn't believe how far a message on Instagram goes. just saying, hey, I like what you're doing. I do this. Maybe we could benefit one another. But it's setting yourself up for the win, right? It's not, if I do ABC, it's guaranteed that this is going to happen, because nothing at all is guaranteed. I got into Safeway like 3 months before COVID blew up, right? And so it was like, oh my God, I'm in a major retailer, and then we have 100-year pandemic.
Which everybody was grocery shopping, but
you would think, and that's a whole.
But it didn't work out quite that way.
On part 2 of this podcast, we'll get into that. But it is, that's the recipe is meeting as many people, being passionate about it, just going at it and playing the odds of having the best possible chance of this piece and the best possible chance of this piece, the best possible one. So someday somebody is like, yeah, we'll do that. We'll buy you. We'll put you on our shelf. And that's really my advice is you have to do that. Because if not, you're never going to get there anyway.
Yeah. What is that? I'm going to probably totally butcher this, but it's like luck is basically where opportunity and preparedness meet, right? Like you just happen, you've done all the work. You've been it's that compound effect of you're showing up, you're doing all these things. And then, because people might look at you and be like, oh, you're so lucky. Like things just fell in your lap. You're like, no.
Right. Well, the more you practice,
3-year overnight success.
Exactly. And there's a podcast I like called How I Built This with Guy Raz, right? It's an NPR, I believe. And his big question to all these entrepreneurs, and these are Mark Cuban entrepreneurs and those type of folks, Jim Rubio. And his question is, was it luck or was it hard work? And they always have varying degrees of one or the other. I'll say this: it is hard work, but you have to have a little luck, and the hard work sets you up for that. Like it's a combo of the two, right? There's no only one. I mean, you can go and break rocks all day long, but
luck is putting yourself out there, right?
You have a little luck, and you're not.
It's doing bold act. I was just talking to a food business success client yesterday, and I was like, I really want to encourage you to do a bold action every day, like DM somebody, send an email to somebody. Like,
absolutely.
Like, you can do all this hard work in the background, but if you don't actually tell people and put yourself out there, there is no luck, because that's where luck comes from, is that energy and the meeting of people and connection, right?
And how lucky we are to live in a time to where, you got one of these, you can send a message to somebody and it can turn into an amazing job opportunity or a business opportunity or just a connection, just a cool connection that leads somewhere you never even thought. I mean, it's so easy. And so, I know not everybody's not as extroverted as me and people person, but part of business is you kind of have to be, right? You really do, because business is a function of how do people benefit one another, right? That's, it just is, and so
business is
get out there and make those connections. Yeah.
It's an exchange of value, right? For money.
Exactly,
so, you have to be willing to get yourself out there and be authentic. You don't all have to be exactly like Brady.
Well, and you don't. And, I hit on it earlier. Like, I think there's such a taboo with the idea of sales and networking, because we have this idea of like the sleazy car salesman, and that's not it at all. Like every day, any advertisement or billboard, or again, social media, watching television, it's people marketing, because that's how a business is run. That's one of the big, foundations of a business is connecting to people, showing them the value you're bringing to it and why they should, give you money in return for that product or service. I mean, that's just part of it.
Yeah. And, okay. So you built it up. We've been slowly building it. You're putting in the work. I know we got got in with Loco, got into Safeway. I remember we had conversations around financing and how are you going to make that work? Because, it was a big, PO for 90 plus stores. And so we did all of those pieces. And we did the label. We worked with a local artist to kind of some of the feedback you were getting. Well, actually, tell us a little bit about what your kind of branding intention was. And then we kind of moved in, we adjusted it a little bit, but I think it still is relevant.
I've always really liked the craft beer industry. I'm sure it's a giant player here in Colorado, but I love their artistry, their playfulness on their bottles, their branding, the different flavors. And I just thought that'd be cool for a seasonings, and especially with my blends and the things I use them for. My flagship seasoning is called the Cowboy Shake, and so originally we wanted some imagery of cowboys, American West, shaking hands. I've got one called the Outlaw Shake. It's kind of a chili lime. These are kind of American West, rustic American feel that I was really going for. And I mean, I'm not an artistic person visually by any means, and so I hit up a person at the time, and they helped me out with some graphics. But going to larger retailers, they kind of made the point, hey, your product's good. It could be great with better labeling. And so we went the direction, and I had made a connection again. A gentleman who I really liked his artwork. He does a lot for publications and local businesses here, and so kind of worked through him and figured out the direction we wanted to go and this kind of rebrand. And yeah, again, it's just a step-by-step process, and there's not an answer. There's a lot of ambiguity to it. And so which direction should we want? And you go and ask 5 friends, and hey, what do you think of these things? And that's what's cool though, is even though I'm not a visually creative person, I got to go through that creative process.
Yeah, that was really fun to do that.
That's part of it. It was awesome. I wish I could show you up in my office here. I actually have the original watercolor prints that the guy did that became the labels for my.
That's right, because he was a real artist, true artist, and so
he's a true artist. And the guy makes a living.
Yeah. So
what was kind of cool on those, he actually paints it and then does a digital high res image.
Yeah,
and that's how you get. He didn't do anything electronic, right?
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Watercolored. Yeah, it was gorgeous.
That was fun. Yeah. So the labels turned out awesome, but I think you still kept that, capturing that kind of microbrewery, craft brewery feel that you were.
Well, it's an artistic. It's a personal touch. These are the flavors I use in my kitchen. I think they're great. I think other people think they're great, and that's the touch I wanted to kind of put my stamp of approval on it. So.
Yep. I love it. I know the gal Peggy, who introduced us, she's still, every time I see her, she's like, oh my gosh, the Outlaw Shake. So amazing.
That's staying power right there. That's what I'm talking about. That's a good feeling.
I know. It's pretty cool. So, all right. So you got the big order, Safeway, we did some label updates, and then COVID hit.
So
tell us about the turn your life took.
The big thing, and what I've been pushing towards, was getting into a major retailer, because a lot of it, when you come to food brands, it's a banners game is what it's called. So you get Safeway to be able to get King Super and Kroger's, to be able to get Wegmans, to be able to get H-E-B, right? And that was the game plan, was, hey, I pushed the boulder up the hill enough to get it over that first kind of hump of hey, we've got the first one. And then COVID hit, and it became this very close thing of retailers were really going to staples. People were buying long time American name brand stuff. People were cooking at home because restaurants were closed. They weren't really wanting to take a chance on new products, which is really ironic, because there was also shortages, and people just like me could have absolutely helped make up the difference and give a little bit more food security.
Like, we can put some product on the shelf, no problem.
And of course, it makes sense really, to me, but over my head, right?
But demos really drove a lot of your product sales too. You were doing a lot of demos.
Absolutely, we're doing demos. I had a third party out to do demos for me in Safeways, Lucky's Market, and then so those got the kibosh. So I couldn't do demos to market and drive sales in the stores. They weren't reordering at the time, again, because they were focusing on keeping their shelves full with the big names that they knew people would buy, because that was the volume at the time. That's what they were doing. And so really the year of 2020 kind of hit a halt. And so we kind of had to pivot a bit from the standpoint of how do I make sales in order to pay my bills, right? I have bills. I have COGS, so cost of goods sold. That's me paying my co-packer for for the product that I'll end up marking up and selling. I have business loans that I've taken out. There's other operating costs. I mean, GoDaddy isn't free, neither is Shopify, in case you guys out there don't know that. And so really, it was how do I keep it going? And that's another one of the big things is, it's not always going to be win after win after win. I mean, you think of like great baseball players, like if you're batting over 300, you're doing awesome, right? So, it's these little wins. How do I keep it alive? And that's really what we went into during COVID was how do I drive online sales? So we've shifted to some more email marketing. Is there anything I can be doing to set myself up so when retailers are ready to go, it's all the spring cleaning stuff of what can I be doing just to help myself be set up for success, right?
Right.
Kind of got through COVID. And, we're still alive. We're still kicking. I haven't gone under yet. I haven't had to, sell the farm and start selling plasma down the street. And so, I
good. Really, glad to hear that.
yeah, we're doing okay. And luckily, again, my wife and I, we both work full-time jobs outside of this, which is great. But, I really said, hey, what are my next steps? Because we kind of got the end of the 2020 and I was like, where's this going? Is it a hobby that pays for itself, or do I really want to continue to grow? And at the time, I made a connection again through social media with a group out of Los Angeles, California, that did a lot of social media marketing. They also had a distributions and brokering group. And so I thought, okay, I have a large banner in Safeway. Maybe it's time to try and scale up and make a big play and hire a broker to try and get me into new larger retailers, right? And so sat down, actually got Sarah in on some of the calls with the guys, and their game plan sounded good. I think their model sounded good as far as how they were compensated versus I put money in a black box, it goes away and hopefully something happens. And so I ended up taking out a business loan to hire those guys because it's they have to keep the lights on as well, and hired them on and had them for about a year trying to get in new retailers.
Yeah. So you were making a big play. You kind of said, well, all right, do I just keep this a hobby? Do I kind of just let it limp along, or do I take a big risk and just see how it plays out? So, I mean, I appreciate your candor in this. I think it's super helpful for people, but
yeah, of course.
I mean, we can say that ultimately you decided to end that relationship. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't what you had hoped it would be. It didn't produce the results that you had hoped. But do you want to tell us a little bit more about kind of learnings or what you would do differently?
Yeah, of course. So again, I hired these guys on. They had really sold up existing connections. That one of the owners had a background as a buyer for a large retailer. And hey, here's our connections. Here's how we can get you up front without going through lots of different channels and the calls and saving you time. And that's my thing is I'm willing to spend a little bit of money to save myself the time and use somebody else's connections. And so that's what we were really going through was, month to month, they're making the connections to different retailers, sending samples, and really trying to get in. And ultimately, I think really what we got lost on was what our true day in and day out game plan was and what the money that I'm spending is really going towards, right? I think our goal was a little bit broad in general in that, hey, you guys are trying to get me into large retailers. It should have been, how many calls are we making a week? How many follow-ups are we doing? How many emails are we doing? What is our goal for this month to be able to get in? And I think had we done that up front, A, we may have been more successful, but B, it may have flushed itself out early on of like, hey, they don't really have as good of a game plan as I think, at least for my business, right? They were successful in other ways. I mean, they were a good, business model for other folks. And I think they were upright guys. And it's not some shady online Nigerian prince type scenario here by any means.
We vetted them. It was.
We vetted them, exactly. But just knowing, sometimes you throw a Hail Mary and it doesn't land, right? Like it doesn't happen. And so, but that's okay. I think I still made some good connections. I did still get in some smaller retailers and other stores. And I kind of learned what to look for if I do want to make a play like that again. How do we set better goals? How do I know, I'm in their best interest and they're working for me, and it's okay. And now I'm kind of where I was a year ago. Like, what's the next play? And that's okay. That's part of it. How do we keep going? I'm paying my bills.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, I've got about 6 months till one of my bigger business loans is paid off. And then all of a sudden that payment each month either goes to pay other stuff off or that's profit. And so, it's kind of a patience game and just figuring out what's next. And I'm excited for it. My stuff in Safeway has been amazing. My sales have like tripled since I started with them. They've put me in other display locations in the stores I'm in. I'm talking to the other large retailer here in Colorado, which is Kroger King Supers. And that's been a very long, you're going to talk about a long game. A long game. And so one of those, like every time, like we're right there, finally sent something to a real buyer. Oh, that buyer got a new job. And so, but we're talking again, the guy called me out of nowhere this summer and said, hey, I want to rehash the conversation and maybe see if we can get you in, because that's a whole different distribution group. And so, it's just, hey, reassessing, keep the lights on, keep paying the bills, and set yourself up to where if you do take a risk like I did, again, it's a numbers game. The more you have things set in place, the less of a risk it is. Just like the more you have things set in place, the better your chance of success, right? Yeah. You're mitigating a risk the same way. So,
yeah, I love that. So it sounds like just setting up key performance indicators, right? KPIs or some benchmarks, and how would you set up reporting better and just feedback. Mm-hmm. So I think those are all really good. And that's always the number one thing you hear with brokers. I mean, for, I guess, people who aren't familiar with brokers, they're basically going to go help shop your product around and help you get into new stores. And, people either have like amazing stories to tell or like pretty horrifying ones. It can be all across the board, but
right. And there were successes. Like I said, there were some smaller retailers right before I ended up canceling my contract with them. I sent samples to a main buyer for Publix, which is a large grocery retailer chain there in the southeastern United States. This buyer was over 160 stores or something like that. And so it's still out there. They're still doing resets. There's still a possibility of that.
Right.
And so there's positives. I really think some of it too, I didn't know what I didn't know. Right. And so now I know to ask, hey, what are you doing weekly for me? What is your game plan? Give me a, outlined, how are you going to contact them? How are we going to get in front of them? How are we ultimately going to get samples to them and get a purchase order? And I think had I known to ask those questions, which sometimes you just don't know, but had I known that, I think maybe it would have been a better success, or I could have known that I should have gone a different direction, right? But hey, it's a lesson learned.
Absolutely. And you didn't, you weren't like mortgaging your house to do this. Like you were taking a calculated risk based on what you knew you could do, and that felt a little uncomfortable, but wasn't gonna, if this didn't work out,
exactly,
like you would be.
And I think I think a lot of people get scared with the money part. Making an investment in something, and just to put it in perspective, I've yet to spend an actual dollar of my own money. That's the beauty of loans and banks and all that. If you take a calculated risk, debt can be your friend. Using debt as a tool to launch you in. There's no way I could have gone and like gotten cash or pulled out of retirement, or what would have really wanted to be able to scale up. But I had my ducks in a row, and I had a bit of success, right? And so I was able to go to a bank and get a small business loan. And there's opportunities out there. So don't ever be afraid to invest a little money if you believe in something, because you're not going to make yourself broke. You're not going to be living on the streets. You're not going to have a debt collector beating down your door. It doesn't work that way, And I think people get scared a lot of like, I want to do it, but oh God, I may have to pay $300 for a Shopify account for the year, And it's like you're willing to spend $300 on clothes on a weekend, and so. Figure out ways into perspective. There's so many tools out there, financial tools and institutions and groups that you can figure out how to finance it. Businesses do, that's what they do. these guys that are,
you want to open a brick and mortar, you're not pulling that out of your savings account most likely.
Right? I mean, this is how it works. And again, you have to weigh it out, and there's a lot of times a time commitment, and you do have to make sales and to be able to get a profit and pay off your liabilities. But don't ever be afraid to take a little bit of a chance. Again, if you've done your research and you feel passionate about it, and you've set yourself up in these areas and mitigated your risk, that's just part of that. That's business at all. That's everything. That's every business. And so, I just wanted to throw that out. I think.
I think that's really
I was
helpful.
scared too early on, right?
Yeah, I love that. I love that there were some wins. It wasn't a total loss. And there's also those strategic byproducts. Like, what do you think? It's not moving my desk down. It's not just the financial success or anything like that, but like, how do you think you've changed as a person through this process?
I think I've become less risk averse. Is that the correct English on that? I think I'm more willing to take a risk because, again, I know how to set myself up to give myself the best chance against it. I know the questions to ask going into a risk. I'm a little more risky in my networking and stuff, and asking a question of, hey, would you be willing to give me a shot at doing this? Or would you be willing to hear me out? Pitching myself in a lot of different areas, right?
Yeah.
It makes you open to that. It's pretty cool that way, right?
It is.
There's things that I would have never thought I would do that aren't even really in my educational background, or things that I've done, and I've gotten to do them because I asked the question, right? And so just taking the chances is something that this has opened me up. And I've met a lot of cool people. Like, that's one thing, like I hit on it earlier, Colorado's food and beverage industry, especially at the small level, it's so many cool people who are passionate about the things they produce and making your quality of life better, and just loving what they do. And that's really cool. All these people that do these awesome things, that at the end of the day, they want better food and better beverages and better lifestyles, and care about where your food and beverage comes from. That's what's been really cool. Super cool.
I love that. So then you took a really big risk and you decided to make a baby.
Yeah, my wife and I, our baby she's just over a month old. So welcomed our daughter, Sterling.
Congratulations, Papa.
Thank you. It's pretty crazy. She looks like Dad.
Yeah.
It's kind of sweet, but I hope she grows out of it. For her sake.
Poor thing. And then you also decided to go back to school and get your MBA. So, you got a few things going on.
Got a few things going, yeah. I'd always wanted to do a master's degree. I just didn't know what. And there's a program through Colorado State. It's a evening MBA. It's kind of set up for working professionals, but you still get the cohort group that I'll go through with the whole program.
That's
and I'll be done by the time my kid's 18 months old. And so it's been awesome. Especially starting a business from scratch and not knowing anything and doing everything by feel. Having that interest in business, it was part of why I did it. It's like all these things that you and I have worked on and have seen. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, you kind of earned a mini MBA.
Exactly, making it a little more formalized. Because it's funny, I'll be in a class and it's like the meme where the guy's like, oh, I've seen that before. And it's like, but it's in a textbook and it's got the actual like bold print of what that means. And so that's been kind of cool. And again, talking about connections and getting lucky in some places. One of the deans of the College of Business hit me up. He found my LinkedIn account at random. Was like, "Oh, you're in our MBA. Oh, and you have a seasonings company." And so he's like, "Hey, I'd love to. I'd like to buy some seasonings, try them out, and give them as gifts." And so you hit these little, and who knows what kind of contacts that might make.
Yeah.
It's just little wins like that. It's really cool.
So fun. So you have kind of life changes. And so I think a lot of times people are like, oh my gosh. I mean, some people could look and say, well, you didn't have kids when you started this and you just had one job. You weren't going to school, but you did. I mean, you had a full-time job and yes, you had the bandwidth to do farmers markets, and do some demos. You decided not to manufacture your product. So I think you've always been balancing, work life, and you and Nicole like to travel a lot. And so, you guys have done it's not like you're just married, like chained to the business, you
No,
have a
not at all.
life and
Not at all. And it's fun, especially now that I'm kind of trying to recenter it and figure out next steps. One of the things that they really preach in the MBA class is scheduling your time, but you kind of schedule it around, here are days that I'm only going to do stuff with my family and I'm not going to do work or that. And then from there, build out of when you do have to work on the stuff. And I think when you schedule your life, right, like the good parts of just living and cooking dinner and being with your family and traveling and going downtown and whatever that is, if you start there and that's the reason you do it, everything else will kind of fall into place. And I naturally, I like to be busy. My wife and I both, we get a little stir crazy. We're just people that to us, living a full life is having things to do and having good obligations, right? And if you build it that way, I think it really helps. And right now, again, I'm figuring out, how do I keep it going? How do I keep it alive and not spend so much time on it? And so, that's my strategy right now. How do I increase online sales so I'm not having to go and sell it? How do I make sure that the places that sell it, like Safeway, are doing well and I'm taking care of those? It's kind of the Pareto thing of, do the 20% to get you 80% of the results, trying to really tie that in right now. And then that way, when another opportunity arises, I'm ready to take it.
Oh, I love that. I love that concept too. That 20%, the Pareto, right? That's what it's called. Yeah. That you're in maintenance mode. You're in maintaining. Let's spend 20% of my available time to kind of keep this going on the things that the wholesale and the things that are already in place. And you're not doing a lot of go out and get new accounts or take some big chance right now. Cause you got a kid. I got
a kid and I'm in grad school. And what's funny is even those little maintenance things, they compound on themselves too. Right. Whereas, if I wasn't doing any email marketing, might get one, maybe two online orders, a week. Now it's like 4 or 5. Right. Yeah. And here's these return customers and here's people that they buy stuff without me having to go and market to them anymore. And so, it does have enough momentum that where, you may not see these big leaps and bounds every day, but I look back and I'm like, man, I don't have to do a lot right now. And I'm getting online orders from people who've ordered before and they loved it as a holiday gift, or they loved it during the summer season or whatever it is. And so don't ever discount these steps, right? Yeah. Don't ever discount those because it's a compounding effect, right? Yep. It's not just cumulative. It's compounding. And so look at me using business terms, MBA.
I know. I was just talking with April and Earl. We were talking a lot about the compound effect. And it is that work you put in up front to get the flywheel going, right? Momentum, get the ball rolling. And so you're taking a little breather, not completely away, but how do you see, like, what do you see in the future for J. Brady Seasonings?
I think I keep pushing forward with trying to get in retailers. I think my next step, and if they're listening, I want to get with you guys. I would love to get in King Soopers. So I am in all the large retailers in Colorado, and figure out how do I get in front of buyers next? Is that going to be going through another broker, which is very possible? Is it me working my way in to them? I don't know yet. Do we go back and say, hey, maybe online is a good enough business plan for now to get me some better profits so I can go and take big chances here or there, or maybe I'm fine with it for a while. That's the beauty of it is, again, everybody wants the recipe. It's your recipe, right? It's whatever works for you. And so again, maybe something falls out of the sky and somebody with HEB in Texas is like, hey, somebody gave us this for a stocking stuffer. We'd like to carry you, but it's taking those shots. You got to take a lot of shots. But the more you do, those things happen. But I think right now is get through the holiday season, try and do as good a sales as I can. I have gotten lucky with a lot of people buying for like businesses for Christmas gifts, right? So think of like financial advisors, realtors, vendors, those guys, buying a few gift packs here and this there, and all of a sudden you made pretty good sales for the month. Really trying to push so when they do resets for King Soopers next year, getting my products in front of those guys and saying, hey, I've got a great track record of success. and your closest competitor in the state, I think we need to talk, and I think it's time. And pushing the agenda with them, because I know that, right? Like we talked about before, I know my numbers, I know my product, and I know how it performs, and so I can go to them with a lot of confidence. And then at the end of the day, trying again to say, how do I get it in the bigger retailers in Utah, New Mexico, and Texas, and Oklahoma, and just keep building out this way. I think that's my game plan.
I love it. I love it. And it's okay. I think this is such a good message for people who are maybe like, oh, if once I start, it just has to be a certain momentum. You can kind of pull the gas back a little sometimes and then put it on again. And
exactly. Well, and I think, you asked me one of the big takeaways, and something for me was I expected that it was going to be kind of a linear, that future wins are all dictated by past ones. And it's really not that way, right? Just because I got Safeway, I was like, oh, well, here's the gravy train, it's going to be King Supers, and then I'm going to be out in Ralph's in California, and then I'm going to be in Walmart within a year, and it doesn't work that way. Just because this succeeded doesn't necessarily mean this will. A lot of times it might, but
it helps,
there might be, it helps, but there might be this other win on the way, and then you might lag for a little while and nothing happens. And then, I'll have some people will be like, are you still doing the seasoning thing? I'm like, yeah. And then I'll have some people like, oh my God, I saw your seasonings on this thing. And so, kind of get rid of all the fuzz and the static out there, and just stay focused and say, hey, I like this. I started it for a reason. I want to keep it going. I know there's going to be ups and downs, and just keep at it.
Yeah. I mean, it's important that you design a business around your life too. And that life is business, business is life. I mean, yes, at the beginning, there will be more hustle. There will be more that, the momentum, the energy that it takes to get something started is more, but that it doesn't always have to be in the hustle, and that you can create a business.
That whole grind culture idea, right? It isn't always that way. And, when you're at it for a little bit, you start to pick up on when you've got to hustle more, right? Strike while the iron's hot. Like if there's an opportunity that comes your way, that's the time to really go at it. If you're pushing and nothing's happening, sometimes that's a great time to say, hey, I'm gonna step back, maybe let it come to me, work on things that aren't just monetary wins and see what happens, right?
Yeah. Well, I think you embody such a couple of things. We finished up a sales series, and I talked a lot about sales equals certainty plus connection. So you're clearly very certain in your product, you're certain in your numbers and the business aspects of it, how it all comes together. So that's amazing. And you have the connection piece. You're very good with people, you're easy to talk to. And that's a skill that not everybody has, but certainly one that we can all develop. You have
and I think,
more natural.
You want to talk about indicators, how much you develop your networking and connections to people. And again, it doesn't just have to be business. It doesn't have to be money. That is one of the biggest indicators if you're going to have success, and you're going to have momentum, and you're going to have growth. That's
100%.
I can't say any more about it. Like you could be the best pasta maker in the world. You could know the numbers the best, but if you can't make a connection to other people and display value in what you do, you'll never, ever get that far.
Oh my gosh. You probably have tons of case studies and things like that on the top 5 people you surround yourself with are determinant of your future, your net worth, and just growing your connections, like you said, your network, which is why I have been loving the group program inside Food Business Success that we have now, and the people are talking to each other now and creating oh, well, I could do this, and what if we did this together? And it's just so cool inside.
Oh, the collaboration's awesome.
Yeah,
it's cool, and it's ideas, and I think some people get a little weirded out when they hear collaborative, because going back to some of the social media stuff, I think there's bad with the good. People hear I'm an influencer, social media marketing is, the girl that takes a couple pictures by the ocean side. But that's not what it is. It's people who, how do I set up a true and real business model that can be profitable? How do I make my product better and produce it better in a local, sustainable way? How do I make this more artistic and visually appealing, those are the real business pieces, not just, a pretty picture and somebody saw it online for, the half second it takes to scroll. And so being aware of what real business coaching is, what real business consultation is, I think when people see the difference, they're like, oh, okay, wow, that's actually how things get built.
Yeah. Yeah. So I can't encourage people. I mean, if you were to put a number on it from, just in your engineer job, pre Brady Seasonings to now, how much would you say your network has increased of just people and connections? And
maybe tenfold.
Yeah.
I know that sounds crazy, but just whether those are quick acquaintances, whether those are small business acquaintances. So I talk to them, once every few months. It's just insane. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
And that has to be so fun to look back and be like,
yeah.
Whoa, my life got bigger because I did this.
Right. Well, I always take a lot of pride. Like I like to be, I don't want to be the guy. I like to be the guy who knows a guy. Right. And so I always I know a guy. So if somebody needs something, I like, that's one of my, from an engineering standpoint, I'm a problem solver. And just because it's not numbers sometimes, I know how to take this person and this person, put their abilities together and create something new. And so I enjoy that part of the networking.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's where you offer, you're able to offer value. You're always connecting people to me and being like, you got to go, farmers markets and things.
Absolutely.
So always appreciate that. But yeah, so I think you do the sales piece, the connection piece really, really well. So that's always been very inspiring. And I think just you're willing to take the shots, right? What's that Wayne Gretsky quotes, like you miss every shot you don't take, right? Yeah. Something like to that effect. But
it's a volume. I mean, business in general is a volume game. You're having to make a lot of connection, out of 100 connections, maybe one person helps you to advance something, or you make a strong, personal connection to, out of 100 sales calls, maybe 5 look at it. I mean, Bill Gates is always big on our success was we hit up 100 businesses and 11 responded and 3 said yes, and then one invested. It's a volume game. Every business, anything you do, nothing is a one for one shot. It'll never be that way.
I think so many people are like, I'll get started, and then you reach out to 3 people and nobody says yes, and then you're like, all right, it's not going to work. And I've always really appreciated it. You're like, let's try this. What about this? What do you think about this?
Yeah.
And sometimes we have to rein it in and be like, okay, what are our goals and where are we going and why is this important? Is this aligned? But I love that you're always looking at opportunities and not, you're willing to take some risk and to do some things.
There's no wrong answers in brainstorming, basically.
Yes.
And that's part of it though, is, you got to have all these ideas and you got to try. And, I think of you live the way of you try one thing and oh, it didn't work. And you just quit and never rehash it. Nothing works that way. And so, I don't know, it's been a cool journey. You've obviously helped me out a lot and figuring out, especially the nuts and bolts piece that I just didn't know, right? Your background in food. I didn't know how to set up profit margins and how to know for my category, how to target that. That was huge. We had a lot of fun when we were figuring out what my target market was and doing different surveys online. I always thought my target market was essentially me, but come to find out it's early 30s stay-at-home moms and retired men in their 50s who like to cook on a Traeger. Who knew?
Right.
So it was cool to find those things out, and then the people who you meet along the way. So
yeah, very cool. Love it. Well, where can people find you if they want to go check out your brand, your seasonings?
So you can find me online at www.jbradyseasonings.com. And then if you live in Colorado, we're carried in Safeway grocers throughout the state, as well as Lucky's Market, a lot of boutique grocers. Think of Alfalfa's in Boulder, the Cupboard in Fort Collins, smattering of stores, like I said, in 20 some odd states. But if you're looking from out of state, definitely check out the website at jbradyseasonings.com. But yeah, I hope you guys try it if you want to. And again, I love my product, like my business, and it's been a great journey.
It's a staple in my cupboard. The Pops Cajun shake is amazing. Yes, you have some great ones. So thank you. You make my cooking easier.
All right, I love it.
So, all right. Any last words of wisdom, Brady, before we wrap up here?
No, just keep, if you're out there and you think you want to try and start something, do it now. Take the risk, mitigate your risk, and set yourself up for success, and just go at it. And part of like a fulfilling life is doing things where you struggle and you have to overcome it, and you get those little wins, and then there's some failures and you learn. And just don't go into it because you want to make a ton of money. Go in it because you just want to try something. You want to be a better person. You want to learn, and maybe you do get some wins out of it.
Yeah, I love it. All right, Brady. Well, I will let you get back to your Sterling, your little girl, and get back to schoolwork. But I appreciate you taking time out of your day to have this conversation and check in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. And, any viewers out there, if you ever have any questions for things I have done, definitely hit up Sari. I'd love to pass along any advice I can.
Awesome. Thank you. You've always been very generous with your time. So that was so fun. So good to catch up with Brady. And I hope you got a lot out of that interview. I appreciate his candor and willingness to share his journey, and lots of good lessons to learn from that. As you guys know, Food Business Success is closed for 2021 for enrollment. But if you are thinking about starting a packaged food business in the new year, I want to encourage you to get on the wait list. We're going to be doing a really cool startup workshop in January. So you want to be the first to be notified about this because it is going to be limited enrollment. So definitely get on the wait list. You can go to foodbizsuccess.com and then /start-waitlist. And we'll put the links in the show notes. So that's start-waitlist. All right, you guys, until next time, have an amazing week. Are you ready to start that delicious idea that you make in your home kitchen, or grow your existing packaged food business and take it to the next level? The most successful food business entrepreneurs have support, guidance, focus, and accountability to help them make it happen quickly without wasting time or money. Plus, I think starting your packaged food business should actually be fun. Food Business Success is your secret ingredient to creating your food business dream. Please don't go this alone. Check out the private free Food Business Success Facebook group to connect with other foodpreneurs, get your questions answered quickly, share your wins, and receive special training and tools I only share inside the private community. Just search for Food Business Success on Facebook or get the link in the show notes. Curious about how Food Business Success can help you? Head over to foodbizsuccess.com and fill out the application to see if you're a great fit for the program. Together, let's make your food business dream a reality.